Perfect. And just a reminder for everyone, if you want to change the view so you can see more faces, there's a gallery view. I think you just need to go up to the view in the top right corner of your Zoom, and you can switch to a gallery view versus the standard site if you choose.
Awesome. All right. With that, let's get started and go around our Zoom room and introduce ourselves. I'll start. I'm Amber Kraska. I'm from Harkness Heights. I am taking on the hefty lift of getting Zap Reboot up and running. So I have not previously been a part of INC Zap, and I'm looking forward to getting the committee off the ground and to sharing and hearing with all of you guys. So thank you again for coming. Keith, you want to go?
Sure. Great. Hey, welcome everybody to our first ZAP meeting of the year. We're so excited. My name is Keith Meyer. I'm the president of INC, and I can't thank Amber enough for being willing to help get ZAP back up and rolling. It's been quite a few months, I know, since the last ZAP meeting, but we're very excited that zoning and planning is coming back. I think this is a core group of Inc. that's been around for a very, very long time. And we're going to hear some pretty cool history of ZAP today from Michael. And just want to thank everybody for coming. And I think it's going to be a great time to kind of reboot and explore some new topics over the next year or so. And we're really trying to get this back up and running. So looking for lots of ideas and participation from anybody who's interested. So thanks again. And thanks, Amber.
Thank you, Keith. Heidi, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Heidi Newhart from West area, from West Colfax. We can RNO, and this is actually my first ZAP meeting, and yeah, I'm excited.
Thanks, Heidi. Lou, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Lou Raiders from Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association. And thanks to Amber and Keith and everyone for getting this back on track. I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Lou. Fernando, you want to go next?
Hey, everybody. My name is Fernando. I am here with the city of Denver. We'll share a little bit about the West Area Plan. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Shane, you're up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shane Sutherland. I'm with the Greater Park Hill community. I believe the oldest RNO in Denver, and this is my first ZAP meeting. I have a zoning chair that will probably be taking most of my spots going forward. Good to be here, though.
Thanks for coming. Joel, you're next.
Hi, I'm Joel Noble in the Curtis Park neighborhood, and I'm happy that ZAP is back.
Yay. Courtland, your turn.
Courtland Hyser. I'm also with the city of Denver. I work with Fernando. I'm the long-range planning supervisor in community planning and development.
Thank you. Michael.
Are you ready?
Yeah, do you want to just introduce yourself real fast, and then I'll have you do the history in about a couple minutes?
Sure. My name is Michael Henry. I'm with Neighbors for Greater Capitol Hill, and Amber asked me to give a little background about the Zoning and Planning Committee, which I'll do in a couple minutes and try to make it very short.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Sean, you're next.
This is Sean. I live in Villa Park, west side of Denver, and I was involved with the planning process as a whatever you call it, interested person, whatever. And I've been to ZAP meetings for the last few years, and it's good to have it back.
Yay. Thanks for coming, and thanks for your participation in the West Area Plan. I can't wait to share more with everybody. You're next, Tim.
Tim McHugh from Washington Park East Neighborhood Association.
Awesome. Thank you. Cindy, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Cindy Sestrich, and I'm with the Cheeseman Park. I live in the Cheeseman Park area.
Awesome. Thank you.
Been with
Robert,
Zap.
you're, oh, sorry.
Oh, I just said I've been with Zap a long time.
Oh, well, thank you for your dedication. Hopefully you can be a guiding hand for me. Robert, you're up.
Hi, Robert Schmed, from Berkeley Regis United Neighbors. Been a member of the committee for a little bit over 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Greg, your turn.
Greg Sorensen, Neighbors for Greater Capitol Hill, and I am delighted that zoning and planning is back on board and hosting meetings. Thank you, Amber.
Yay. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you. David Prado, you're up.
Hey, I'm David Pardo. I'm a renter, so I've been in many different neighborhoods over the years, but I've been in Denver for over 10 years now. So yeah.
Yay. Welcome. Thanks for coming. And then is it Ione? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's right. I'm with Dry Creek East, and I'm glad to be here.
Yay. Okay. Well, I think if I missed anybody, raise your hand. Let me know. I think I got everybody. Okay. Seeing no hands risen, I'm gonna get started with our presentation. Let's see. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Bruce. I forgot you, Bruce. I'm sorry. You're up.
Bruce Basquette with Hutchinson Hills Willow Point Homeowners. I'm glad Zap is back too.
Yay. Well, thank you guys. Hearing that people have been around and that you guys are still with us is very exciting for me. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully going off of the amazing foundation that Zap already has. So with that in mind, I'm going to get started on some rules, not rules, but dare I say rules? Yes. So if you want to be on video, that'd be great. If not, totally understand because we are being recorded. If during the presentation you want to ask questions, if you type them in the chat box, that would be great. And then really a big thing for me with Zoom and online meetings is let's just be respectful to everybody. I know that sometimes, especially with zoning and planning issues, we can have differing opinions and views, but let's all just agree to treat everybody with respect. So with that said, I'm going to go over our agenda for the evening, which is a little welcome, which I feel like we already did by getting to know each other. I'm going to do just a brief history of who I am, and then I'm going to toss it over to Michael to give you guys a history of Zap and how Zap got started and how we find ourselves where we are today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Courtland and Fernando to talk about NPIs in general, but also more of their focus on the West Area Plan. And then I'm going to turn it over to Heidi, who was integral in getting the West Area Plan up and running. And then hopefully the last 20 minutes or so, I will be able to have kind of a roundtable discussion about what you guys know what's going on in and around the city, future topics going forward. If there's anything that you are a pro on that you want to present on, and then, just finding out if you want to get more involved as we go forward. So first, I really want to say thank you to you guys for coming, making the time. This committee is not going to be valuable without participation and contributions from you guys. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And then if you know anybody else that's interested, it sounds like maybe a couple of your RNOs have Zap committees. So if they do, please, send this information. The more people that come to these meetings, I feel like the more valuable it's going to be for all of us. And with that said, I am Amber Kraska. I am your current co-chair, a proud Colorado native, which native have you met that's not proud and doesn't let you know about it? I have a professional background in residential real estate. I've been licensed for 15 years. I'm currently the president of my RNO, Harkness Heights, and I've been on the board for about 3 years. I got involved with Zap stuff right shortly after I moved to the neighborhood. We were working on an overlay, a conservation overlay. And I was like, oh, wow, it matters what we say. And so that was really what got me interested in all things Zap. And then last year in June, I joined the Brun Zap board, where I sit with Robert Schmidt. And then in March, I got elected as a delegate at large for INC. So a little bit, I'm not as extensive with background in ZAP as some other people. So hopefully you'll bring a fresh, a fresh view to things. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Amber, and I really admire you for taking on this task. I was one of the founders of Interneighborhood Cooperation back in 1975, and I helped develop the RNO ordinance in 1979. And I call that ordinance the lifeline for neighborhoods. And I know that Lou and Gertie, at one of the delegation meetings recently, were talking about how important that was, and particularly all the notifications that RNOs receive as a result of the RNO ordinance. I was the chair of INC in the mid-1970s, and I was the chair of the INC Zoning and Planning Committee. I really hate acronyms, but it's very easy to call it the ZAP Committee, especially since it's sort of funny to imply that we have that power to zap things. I care deeply about the success of INC and Denver's RNOs. And one of the things that I highly recommend that this committee undertake is the same thing that Joel and the INC Transportation Committee is doing, and that is to review and update the zoning and planning platform for INC. And we spent an awful lot of time, by that I mean the ZAP committee and the board, adopting that, I think back in 2015, but it clearly needs review and updating. One thing that I have believed very strongly about INC in general, and I know you all agree, is that INC and RNOs need to be very diverse and representative of all parts of the city and all parts of your neighborhood. And we just, if we lose sight of that, we really lost much of our influence. Many years ago, the ZAP committee had an agreement or a bargain with the executive director of community planning and development. And I would just like to remind Amber and Keith of that, and everybody on the ZAP committee, and particularly the staff of CPD. But we had a deal, a bargain, that CPD would come out to the ZAP committee to explain and get comments from us about any language amendments that they were proposing, or any major map amendments. And I sure encourage you to keep up with that. Another thing that I remind all of you is that in the past, the ZAP committee dealt with not only zoning and planning issues, but also liquor licensing and marijuana issues and landmark preservation issues. All of those have very serious impacts on quality of life in neighborhoods. And hopefully, Amber, you and the committee can find ways to keep in touch with all of those issues. For several years, the committee would organize and host, and Joel reminds me of also neighborhood inspection services. And that's also one of the very important items that the committee dealt with. But we also had several seminars, I think we called them academies, where there'd be training sessions for marijuana or liquor or other major issues like that. The final point I'd like to make, and I know that Gertie Grant and Lou Raiders emphasized this a month or two ago at a delegation meeting, but it's extraordinarily important. And that is that every RNO receives from the city, whether it's zoning or planning or liquor or marijuana or other important city outreach issues, notices about things that are happening, including all applications for rezonings and liquor and marijuana licenses. And each RNO absolutely must designate someone, whether it's the president or zoning committee chair or just someone who will agree to promptly open those notices and read them and try to decide how important they are. Admittedly, many of them are pretty tiny and won't have much of an impact. But you need to think about it and get it to the right committee or neighbor or whatever, and figure out if you're going to do something about it. Because as I mentioned before, those notices are the lifeline for RNOs. It used to be in the old days, the only thing that the city would do would be to post a sign on the front window or the front property line of the property in question. And if you didn't happen to drive by or walk by or bike by and notice it and understand it, it was worthless. And we weren't doing our job for our neighbors and our members unless we deal with those notices. So thank you, Amber, and feel free to keep in touch with me, and I'll be happy to attend all of your meetings and chime in. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for everything, all the guidance already thus far, for starting being a founder of INC, for being so heavily involved in ZAP. I mean, for your leadership already thus far. I think a big thing that you said that struck me is, and really why I want to get involved is I know, I think working together alongside with the city gets far more things done than coming from a place of maybe not as friendly. And I really want to I want to make that part of my main focus. And also those notices, those pesky notices that I keep getting in my email that initially I would just delete. Now I am, especially being a part of ZAP, the bigger ones, I think finding a way to network, making sure that RNO is notified if there is a big rezoning coming and they're not hit with it the day before a building gets demolished, is another thing I'm really hoping to take on. So thank you again so much, and thank you for the time, and hopefully I can make you proud. That's my goal. So with that, I am going to introduce again Courtland and Fernando. Courtland's a senior city planner supervisor, and Fernando is a senior city planner, and they are going to get started on the first half of our presentation on NPIs, the neighborhood planning initiative that the city's been working on. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. I'm going to let you guys screen share. Fernando, do you want to go first, or is Courtland going to go first?
I'll kick it off.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll try to. I'm Zoom challenged. We don't use Zoom too much at the city, so
Okay.
I'll try to full screen share the presentation. And you'll have to let me know if it's working.
Sure. Do you see that you're able to? Do you see the button that says screen share?
Yeah. Are you not seeing it? I think I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, he's screen sharing. I think you should stop your screen share because
got it. Stop share. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a new feature of
Thank
Zoom
you,
where
Joel.
multiple people can at once. That's
Great.
different. And then Courtland, if
Oh,
you swap
I didn't know
your
that.
view.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. We're seeing, I think, your not presentation mode, but the one that has the notes as well. So you're sharing maybe the wrong screen.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you all for working with us
share?
technically challenged people.
I can try to go
Oh,
and
that's
share it if you
yeah.
want.
I don't. It gives me this view when I go to full screen. I think it thinks I have a second monitor, maybe, and I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Do you want to give it a try, Fernando? Is that maybe easier?
Yeah, let me try to give it a try.
Portland, you might have to stop sharing then,
Okay.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I just did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool new feature, I guess. Are we seeing now the presentation full screen?
Yes, you got it.
We are.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about the hiccups there. Good thing that we have Fernando. Could you advance it to the next slide, please? Right. So yeah, my name's Courtland Hyser. I've been a city planner with Denver CPD for about 15 years, and I'm now the supervisor over the long range planning program. And Fernando's a senior city planner. I'm going to go first. I'll try to talk for 10 minutes or less, and then same thing for Fernando, 10 minutes or less, and then we'll turn it over to Heidi for her presentation. So what I'm going to do is provide a little background on the neighborhood planning initiative, sort of at the program level. And then Fernando's going to introduce the West Area Plan, including some of the innovations that the West Area Plan featured that were new for the neighborhood planning initiative. And we'll try to keep it relatively short before passing it over to Heidi. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first question, which is a reasonable one, is, why do we do this at all? Why do we have neighborhood plans? And the term that we use in Denver is small area plans. A small area could be anything that's smaller than the whole city. So a citywide plan like the comp plan or Blueprint Denver, addresses the entire city geography. A small area plan is anything that's not the whole city. So most commonly they're neighborhood plans, but we've also done plans for station areas around, rail transit stations in particular, and corridor plans and other types of plans. And NPI is a bigger geography of groupings of neighborhoods, but it's still, in the city's terminology, a small area plan. So what we've done is listed here on the slide some of the reasons. I think these are not even a full list, but there are a lot of reasons to do small area plans. I think the biggest one is that it's an opportunity for people in the neighborhood, business owners, residents, people who work in the area, to come together and create a shared vision for the future. And by doing that and then writing a plan that's consistent with that vision, we can create policy guidance for future decision making in the city that can sometimes be in place for decades, as we still have neighborhood plans, from 20, 30 plus years ago that are still in effect and that are used to help guide decisions. So it is a powerful tool in the sense that it has a lot of longevity, and until plans are replaced by new plans, they tend to just kind of stay on the books. So one of the other reasons is to try to get ahead of change. So you want to do the plan before all the change happens so that the plan can be used to guide that change. Sometimes an area gets hot and takes off and experiences a lot of change in a short amount of time. And it's always better to have a plan helping to guide that than to not. And so that's another big reason why we want to do small area or neighborhood plans. A lot of people come to the table. We engage thousands of people in a neighborhood planning process. So there's a civic involvement component. We're able to get into more detail than you can get into with a citywide plan like Blueprint Denver. There's also an opportunity through small area plans to update documents like Blueprint Denver. And that is a core component of what we do when we create a neighborhood plan, is that there's a hierarchy that's in place where we can make updates to the Blueprint Denver maps, and then through adoption of the plan, automatically update Blueprint Denver to make it consistent with the updated guidance from the neighborhood planning process. Another important aspect is that neighborhood plans is where we really focus on how different systems interrelate. There are a lot of different citywide plans, and most of them tend to address a single topic. So there are a lot of different transportation plans that are organized by mode. So there's a pedestrian and trails plan, the transit plan, for example. Parks and Recreation has the game plan. All of those things are addressing those individual topics at the citywide scale. Well, when we do a neighborhood planning process, we lay all that stuff on top of each other and try to see that it all still makes sense. And then we recommend modifications if we discover that things don't make sense. A lot of new visionary ideas come out of neighborhood planning processes. It's an opportunity to recommend new projects that are needed, new connections, pedestrian bridges, things like that. And then the way that the plans are most regularly used on a day-to-day basis is that they're the first thing that staff looks at when someone applies for a rezoning. And it's a formal part of that process to compare what the rezoning request is to the adopted plans that are in place. And so the neighborhood plans carry a lot of weight for that process in particular. But they're also used as references for when we're updating the code itself, or when the city's contemplating what infrastructure investments are needed, and other budgetary decisions. All right, next, please. So this shows sort of the lay of the land before we started the neighborhood planning initiative. The city of Denver had been creating neighborhood plans for decades before that. And in 2002, the original Blueprint Denver was adopted. And so we sort of view that as like a watershed moment where, a plan that's older than Blueprint 2002 was especially old because Blueprint, updated citywide plan guidance in significant ways. And so for a long time, that was kind of the benchmark. And in 2017, when we started an update process for Blueprint Denver, was also the time that we started looking at neighborhood plans and what was or wasn't in place. And since the original Blueprint Denver was adopted, so over a 15-year time span at the time, there was only 19% of the city that had been covered by a small area plan since Blueprint 2002, which is a relatively low number. So that means that there's 80% of the city that did not have, a small area plan during that 15-year time period. And that really was the observation that led to the realization that we needed to do something about that, so that over the next 15-year period, we could cover 100% of the city instead of just 19% of the city. And that led to the creation of the Neighborhood Planning Initiative. Next, please. So there's a document called the MPI Strategic Plan, which really lays out in detail how MPI was organized when we created it 6 years ago. But these are the basics. So the goal is to cover 100% of the city in less than 15 years. So like looking back at that 15-year time period from when the original Blueprint was adopted to when we made this decision, wanting to then cover 100% of the city over the next 15 years. How do you accomplish that? It means a lot more planning than we'd been doing previously. And so the solution that was identified was, there's 78 neighborhood statistical areas. And if you do a plan for each one individually, that's a really heavy lift to create and adopt 78 plans. But we could gain some efficiency or make it a more manageable number by grouping neighborhoods together. And so that's what this map is here. These are the 19 NPI planning areas. And so by that act alone, we've reduced the lift quite a bit from 78 plans to 19 plans. It suddenly starts to look more manageable to actually cover the entire city. The other thing we could do is do more plans at once. Prior to MPI, we would typically have 1 or 2 neighborhood plans in process at a time, or some other kind of small area plan, like a station area plan, but usually not more than that. And so through MPI, we made the commitment that we're going to do 3 at once, rather than just 1 or 2. And then another thing that we tried to accomplish with the original MPI as we set it up was to standardize the content that's in plans, or maybe more accurately, establish what the minimum is, so that there are certain identified topics that are always addressed. Because if you look at neighborhood plans over the years preceding that, they were kind of all over the map in terms of what topics were addressed. Most of them, probably all of them, I guess, addressed land use. They wouldn't necessarily have an easy to read map. Some of them address economy and housing related topics, others didn't. So we sort of created a list of always topics, and then that every plan would need to address, and then left flexibility in place for additional topics that, that arose through the planning process to also be added into the scope. Next slide. All right, so we've been at it for about 6 years, and in that time, that's 2 phases of MPI, so 3 plans each. In the first few years of Neighborhood Planning Initiative, we adopted plans for Far Northeast, East Central, and the East planning areas. And then we started phase 2, where now we've adopted just earlier this year, the West Area Plan, in March, and the Near Southeast Area Plan in May. Then we've got Near Northwest still in process. Next, please. And so going back to that map, so before we created the Neighborhood Planning Initiative, we had that 19% coverage, and we wanted to do better. Next. And this next slide here shows what that coverage looks like now. So, in the 15 years before we created NPI, we had 19% of the city covered. by adopted plans. In the 6 years since NPI, we've covered an additional 27.5% of the city. And so in 6 years, we've covered much more than we had in the prior 15. And so in that aspect, NPI has been pretty successful. Next slide. So next up will be phase 3 of NPI, where we'll take on another 3 plans. But before we started all of that, we thought it would be a good time now to sort of pause the program and evaluate it and ask, some important questions like, are we accomplishing the program's goals? Can it be improved in terms of consistency, efficiency, implementability, which isn't a word, but we use it a lot, making sure that plans are implementable. So rather than just plowing ahead and keep on doing the same old thing, we kind of wanted to look at the program and see if it would make sense to make any refinements to it. And so we have a special project underway right now where we're doing just that. We're trying not to take too much time with it. So just starting in June, we sort of started this evaluation and we're going to try to wrap it up by the end of the year. But in a couple of weeks, we'll be taking some ideas to the City Council Budget and Policy Committee and also the Denver Planning Board to sort of talk about what we've heard, as we've engaged people about NPI and their thoughts on the program and things that should be changed or improved. We talked to them sort of about the preliminary direction that's emerging from that before any decisions are made, and then move forward with picking a preferred alternative out of some different options that are being considered, and then spend the last couple months of the year documenting, the new processes that we want to put in place. So we're sort of in the middle of that right at the moment and getting close to when we'll be making some decisions on what the program looks like moving forward. And so with that, I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over to Fernando, who's going to focus more on the West Area Plan.
Thanks, Courtland. So I'll take it from here and we'll just kind of walk through a little bit about what the West Area Plan was. And just starting here kind of with the same map that Courtland was talking about, the NPI. So we focused on the West NPI area that included the 6 neighborhoods of West Colfax, Villa Park, Sun Valley, Barnum West, Barnum, and Valverde. This was our process timeline. The process started around fall of 2019. And then, as we all know, spring 2020 came and the whole world was upside down. So we had to reconsider how to work through the plan. And that ended up taking a little bit longer. And then the plan ended up being adopted, as Courtland was mentioning earlier this year, spring 2023. Throughout the plan, there was a variety of options to get involved. We had a couple of workshops and online events, surveys. We posted the draft itself online for people to make comments. We went to a lot of different RNO meetings. We hosted different virtual sessions of office hours and in-person office hours, and a total also of 36 steering committee meetings. Shout out to Heidi and Sam that are here that helped us throughout the process. In terms of the different tools that we used throughout the process to get the information out and share information, we had newsletters and email subscribers that reached a lot of different people, social media, using the Twitter and Nextdoor, some earned media that was like news articles and different newspapers in town. And then in terms of other more inclusive engagement, we had Spanish interpretation and childcare, some flyers being translated. We also a flyer and to promote the first draft, different electronic communications, and then we also posted print copies of the plan itself at different community locations such as libraries. Yeah, I see that Keith's hand is up. Like, do you want to ask a question right now or later?
Well, I just wanted to know if there's a good time to include this or not, but we had spoken with Councilwoman Torres and she had mentioned something about the fact that you used some maybe nonprofits to be able to go into people's homes that didn't necessarily participate in a lot of these community initiative meetings, like, you know, RNO meetings or anything like that. Was that something that happened, or was that maybe the RNOs that went out and did that?
That I'm not completely sure since I wasn't here for the whole process, but I'm sure, I think the RNOs definitely helped share some of the information, but I'm not sure it was a different organization involved besides kind of the RNOs, or can you remember that, Courtland?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is something that we're doing now for the Near Northwest area plan, which is also in Councilwoman Sandoval's district. We call them community navigators. And so they do just that. It's like sort of more hands-on outreach, one-on-one, you know, visits and things like that. And that was something that we started after the West Area Plan. It was sort of like an idea that we've been pursuing, you know, for other planning processes that you know, started after West. So we didn't do it precisely for this planning process, but instead staff would go to a lot of different RNO meetings, like whenever invited, we would come and give updates to RNOs and participate in their meetings.
Thanks.
Thanks for asking that question. And then just to continue here, I'll talk a little bit about some of the bigger elements that centered around the West plan itself and made it more unique to other plans. Right here on the slide, we have kind of the overall layout of the different chapters and topics that each of the different MPI plans include, as Courtland mentioned. This kind of four topics that are on the red box are kind of the core elements of the plan. The chapter of quality of life, a chapter on mobility, a chapter on land use and build form, and then an economy and housing chapter. And throughout the West Area Plan, what we heard a lot was that quality of life was a very important topic to highlight. So what it did and the plan was put the chapter first and foremost kind of on the layout of the plan, but more importantly, I think we try to incorporate that quality of life lens in all the different chapters in the plan itself. And how we did that in interwoven the quality of life element in the different chapters. For example, in the mobility chapter, we added some information about reducing transportation pollution. In the economy section, we included a green workforce development. And then in the land use section, we included kind of the link to the green building ordinance in the city. Another important element of the West Area Plan, for its proximity being right next to the river, we heard a lot that water and the river was a very important element in this plan, so we definitely highlighted it. We created a water section for it. It wasn't just one kind of map or anything. It was a complete water section that talked about all the different kind of existing conditions, challenges, and then visions for how water is a very important element overall in the city, and more importantly for this area in its proximity to the South Platte River and the different gulches that run through the area. And also something that we heard a lot was a kind of the different historic and present inequities in the West Area Plan. We created this map that mapped a previous historic inequities. We do that a lot in Blueprint Denver. Blueprint Denver has equity components that looks at equity kind of from at a current moment standpoint, but it doesn't really look and document past inequities. So what we try to do here on the West Area Plan was document those past inequities. So in a form of this historic timeline and the map, we documented a lot of historical events that happened throughout the area and linked that to how the recommendations tried to address those historic inequities throughout the plan. I think that's it from our presentation, so thanks for listening. I think it's.
Thank you,
Amber, I
guys.
don't know if you have some
Yes, that'll be a perfect intro into Heidi, who was, again, I mean, integral, I think, in getting quality of life as the center, which it had not been before of any planning initiative in the city. Colfax Heidi is a member of West Colfax. She's also on the board and the mobility committee. And then she was on the steering committee and then also on the smaller working group committee. So she worked really hard and hand in hand to get this plan adopted. So with that, I'm going to start your presentation, Heidi. Awesome. All right, I'll hand it over to you, Heidi.
Okie doke, thank you. Well, that was actually really informative for me as well, because Courtland's section, I think I learned a lot of about what it's so interesting how we get involved in these community projects, and really sometimes we just show up to where we're invited, and we sort of baptism by fire. And to that, I actually was not on the original invite list to the steering committee, or appointed, I guess. I'm not sure how that process even works. But because of COVID, I was going to the general, but because of COVID, we lost some people on the, people moved away, or, things happened with people's lives during COVID. So an all call went out to ask for participation on the steering committee, and I got the invitation and went. Sean, I believe, was an original member of the steering committee. So that was really helpful to kind of get that outline. And it's kind of interesting. I was also on the, Courtland had mentioned, some focus groups around how the process went. And I did participate in one of those. And it's interesting that we all kind of seemed there was a theme around confusion about what is an NPI process and what is CPD and what does it even stand for. And we kind of, again, just show up where we're invited and sort of try to do the best we can to fill in. And certainly that is what I did. And we were very lucky in the West area that the group that I ended up getting involved with on the steering committee, there was a lot of talent on that group. Sean, who's been involved in his community, and alongside people who are city planners, a woman, Elizabeth Walsh, who was integral in having and organizing us and helping us understand what that even meant, and had a PhD in planning and a prolific writer, and other people who've been working decades in the community. So it was really, and we were assigned planners who were very open to some things that were, unconventional, I think, to the planning process. So it was a really great experience, I think, for myself and for all of us, really, into an MPA process and having a plan, that when Courtland mentioned, that organizing a plan so that each plan looks similar or has similar components is a great way to look at, I think, from a planning department perspective, for a citywide approach to neighborhood plans. I think that from a neighborhood perspective, that can feel or look a little bit reductive or linear or formulaic. And so and it's, I think, really kind of reconciling that with, the organic nature of neighborhoods was something that I know that I personally struggled with, and trying to kind of figure out what that all meant. And I think that kind of questioning from myself and others is what kind of pushed us to do what we did to be able to achieve what I think that we accomplished with having our plan reflect a lot of what we thought was important. The other piece of it, I think, that is tricky, as Courtland mentioned, is neighborhood plans were one neighborhood, which can cause, a workflow issue, and producing plans for all the different neighborhoods in Denver. So grouping neighborhoods together is sort of a workflow approach that I think it was smart to do. But for us, I think that an outcome of that was that it was a group of neighbors in the same neighborhood, with, already having shared goals, at least by proximity of living next to each other, that we, having 5 different neighborhoods forces, or for us, it forced a more regional, or resulted in a more regional type approach to our neighborhood plan, so that, it creates a layer of, I think, confusion for the NPI process from a layperson's perspective. So the way that we in the West started to really kind of address these confusions that were coming up for us was to start meeting outside of the regular CPD steering committee meetings and the regular all-call meetings that were going over the main components, the meetings that would be for the larger community to meet around mobility and comment on mobility, meet around land use and comment on land use. So the steering committee started meeting outside of those meetings, so that we could just start talking amongst ourselves about what our priorities were and where we wanted, where our ideas were around with where our plan could take us and what it could do for us. And that's where, we really just kept meeting. And our first meetings were very not really knowing each other or how to explain what ideas were about big, some pretty big picture concepts around equity and anti-displacement, safety, ecology, water, transportation, access. I think we knew that all of those things to us were very interrelated, and to how to take sort of a little more linear, or to us seeming a little reductive layout, and how to make it more organic, which is, I think, from a planning and maybe engineering perspective, is not as exciting as it is for people in the neighborhood. But these slides that are being shown now, we were meeting, and then we created a powerful conversations guide. What ended up being the powerful conversations guide, which really the framing that we were working with was what makes us whole and what are the false solutions to kind of identify that disconnect. And we did that around each of the sections. And I think that really helped solidify where our strengths were and where our shared priorities were, and how we could articulate that amongst ourselves and to CPD to be able to inform our plan. So I think that so this document, it is linked in the West Area Plan, in I believe the introduction and the quality of life section. So I mean so when we were going through all this is sort of the impetus, like this led us to the conclusion that we're like, the quality of life, this is where it all is. And, the West area also has been, like all of Denver, but, dealing with a lot of displacement, a lot of development, a lot of pressure for development. And we, one of the larger issues that, came up for at least me is just kind of, and I think others too, but I'm just speaking for myself here, that how do we, we come to these community meetings and we think that we're communicating what it is that we want to see in our neighborhoods, and the process to get there somehow squeezes out a lot of those quality of life. They tend to happen last, and so it's not just that happens that the life section was at the end of the plan, but it also feels like it's sort of that's how it would end up in reality too. And how do we flip that script to invite not just any development, but development that wants to be in relationship with our neighborhoods and that can be layered over and take advantage of our assets, which, as you can see, water runs through our neighborhoods to the river. It doesn't just, it's not just on the border, it comes all through our area. And we also have, we are bound by CDOT highways that come through our neighborhoods. We have high capacity transit centers, and all of these things are interconnected. And how do we go ahead and how do we take our problem and turn it into a solution via the plan? So that's really where that came from, and to introduce more of a systems approach to our problems or our solutions, and that with that quality of life lens, when put onto everything and to inform everything, that perhaps that would be a way for us to end up with, to start with, the base of what it is that we want in our neighborhoods to see in our neighborhoods first. And then the other things can be layered on top of that. I think that when we first presented that in the process, there is a process in the plan where the steering committee signs off on the draft, I guess, or the pretty well formulated draft that then gets taken out to the larger community for feedback, and then it goes through its processes through the board's approvals and to the eventually to city council. Because we're so organized and because we could articulate what it was that we wanted to see in our plan, I think that is what allowed us to be successful in getting the plan to where it's something we could be happy with and proud of and we could use. So I would highly recommend that for anyone going through the process in the future. And I don't think, as far as next steps or, I think that, we wanted also, something else that's important is we wanted this to be a living document. We didn't want it just to sit on a shelf. We wanted to be able to use it. And I do take my copy of the plan to pretty much every meeting that I go to be able to turn to sections and use those sections. I think that other city organizations are looking to the West Area Plan because I think it's so well, I think because we understand it so much better because we lived and breathed it. We're able to start talking about, I don't know, overlays, whether that would be what an overlay would look like, but something that could, if an overlay the right words, but just to be able to keep saying, okay, here's our base map, and then we can, what happens next, to keep accentuating and building on that framework that we were able to do together, because we were able to really organize and to meet and to really get on the same page. Now, I think that the things that maybe you're missing from our plan that I can see are, I think I'd love to see a broader involvement from the larger community, and I think that we can we can continue to do that and to build more support and to get more of that diversity that Michael was talking about in ideas and people, and to build that larger. But I think that, I think we've got something together that we can all be proud of and that we can work from.
Yay. Thank you so much, Heidi. The plan is it, correct me if I'm wrong, 316 pages total.
Something, yeah.
It's in our chat. If you haven't read through it, I mean, the deeper that I got into it, one thing that was really striking to me is those 6 neighborhoods are pretty different. They are not, especially West Colfax. It is way more commercial. And then everybody, after talking to different folks that were involved in this process, the ability of everybody to work together for the highest good of quality of life, and not say, well, but this is better for my neighborhood and this is better for my neighborhood, but for everybody to be able to come together to figure out what was best for everybody is a big highlight for this plan. And Heidi and Sean, it sounds like I really commend you guys for as much effort and energy as I could only imagine that this took for you guys. So thank you so much. And thank you to Courtland and Fernando also for helping and, leading the way on maybe helping Denver develop in a more conscious kind of a way, which maybe we've been missing for a while. So with that, I'm going to get started with some questions. It looks like, for Courtland, what outreach, this is for Michael, what outreach, if any, have you made to citizens and RNOs and Inc. about the effectiveness of the NPIs? I think it's fair to say that the INC ZAP committee, especially Joel, strongly recommended that all neighborhoods should have an up-to-date neighborhood plan. So do you know about current outreach that you guys are doing? It sounds like because of the reevaluation, maybe you have done some of that.
Yeah, I think that I guess we could ask Michael, is that what you're referring to, as part of our program evaluation? Is he still there?
Oh yeah, let me unmute. Yeah. Michael, will you unmute? Did you hear Courtland's question? We want to make sure we understood your question correctly.
Yes, exactly. I would like to think that there'd be some outreach to the RNOs and the neighbors to help evaluate it.
Yeah, what our approach was that we engaged the groups that have been directly involved with MPI plans in the past. So we held sessions with city council members, the planning board, other city departments that we partner with, to coordinate on plan content. Former steering committee members, that was the group that Heidi was referring to. So we emailed all of our former steering committee members, many of whom are connected to RNOs or represent RNOs, and gave them a survey and asked, as part of the survey, would you like to participate, in a follow-up discussion? And so everybody who said yes, we then invited to basically just a conversation to talk about MPI and what they liked or what would like to change about it. So that's been our process. It's more focused on the people who have a lot of direct experience with actually producing an MPI plan, to leverage that experience and talk about how it should change or stay the same.
Awesome. Thanks for that. This is a question from Cindy, and she asked, when you add new information influencing development in future area plans, how are you going to handle the existed completing plans to incorporate new information? And Cindy, if there's any follow-up to that, if you know, you want to add anything for Courtland, or Courtland, if you have a question too, to understand her question.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, maybe just a little bit more detail on the question. I'm not sure. It says when you add new information, what do we do with the existing plans? I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Yes, I went over the West Area Plan, and there is a lot of really invaluable information that we didn't get, and being the first ones in the Central Plan, Central East, whatever we're called right now.
Oh, yeah, East Central Plan?
East Central, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do you do to update that information? Because there's a lot here that really influences the type of development that goes in that we didn't get.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is, you know, as a result of the process that Heidi was talking about.
Yes.
That, you know, was something new that we encountered in the West Area Plan that I think, you know, hadn't happened in other ones before, that led to, you know, a lot entirely new topics, you know, that we hadn't included in plans before, like the water section, or the equity section was greatly expanded with some of the information that Fernando was talking about. I think that in working with the community and discovering, you know, what was like truly important to them and realizing that there were gaps in the plan, we worked pretty hard to try to address those things. And so that's one of the ways I think where each plan's unique, and different things come up and different priorities are identified as being, you know, more important in one community, and that might be different when, you know, we do the process in another one. And so we try to standardize the content to some degree, so we're addressing all the same topics, but then, you know, there's a lot of unique things that emerge as a result of each planning process being unique as well.
Right, right. And I'm thinking about before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, the homeless situation really started to come into place. And keeping people in their homes is so utterly important. And we're having a very difficult time doing that all across the city, but like especially in our area. And I see the West started to address a lot of things, heat islands, all kinds of things that are coming out now that we didn't get to specify in our plan. So how are you going to address that?
Well, we will be going back, you know, so like we're trying to cover 100% of the city. But once we do that, part of the MPI mission is to then keep all of the plans up to date and relevant. And so we do envision, once we finish, you know, covering the whole city, that we'll go back and update all of the plans. And so that is part of the thought process behind the neighborhood planning initiative. But you know, when it comes to like updating plans, that is something, like there are possible mechanisms, you know, it's called a plan amendment, and we do have that, but it's not, we wouldn't usually do it just for like more detailed information. It's usually in response to some kind of like change condition, where the guidance itself in the plan needs to be changed, you know, so like where we find out that the land use recommendations aren't valid anymore. So like an example of that would be, you know, right next to downtown, Elitch Gardens, you know, it's just identified on citywide plans as, you know, entertainment kind of use. And so if Elitch Gardens closes or moves somewhere else, what should you do with that land is something that, you know, we needed a plan amendment to address that possibility in the future. So that just as an example of something that could lead to an amendment to a plan.
And by amendment and update, do you mean public process again?
Yes. Yeah, we would do a whole public process around that. And when we've done plan amendments, that's what we've done.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtland. Heidi, I've got one for you. What recommendations would you give for participants just starting the NPI process? And then how do you break through this initial confusion for the group and get to the point to be as effective as your group was?
Well, I mean, I can't stress enough how important it was for us to organize outside of the planned meetings that were constructed for us. I think that, and even to touch on some of what Cindy was asking about too, is that when we're together in our in our communities, in our group, in our sort of our working group steering committee, we can be a little more like honest about what we're confused about. There was a lot of discussion around that, like, is the plan supposed to address this, or can we talk about this, or why don't we just see if we can, and why don't we just do it, and why don't we just act as if, and we could come up with questions, and those Fernando had that slide up that showed the other ways to communicate. So we took advantage of meeting those office hours, and sometimes a couple of us would just go to for one of those an hour with the planner, which I thought was a really great way for us to have one-on-ones and to talk about things that we're specifically interested in, and how that presents itself in the plan, or how do we do this, or what is, so I think that was also important. So we were working together, but we were also working individually for the collective. So we did all things however we could all the time. So we were just one of those plans that were always. And we also, the other thing is that because our plan was during COVID, this was basically a 2.5-year process, getting it just where it could get out the door, where others are more like 1.5 years. So we had double the amount of time to process, to think, to have conversations, to make sure that we were understanding the process, and to make sure that it is a living document. And I think that is speaking to what Cindy was talking about, is like, yeah, like how do we, like, even now I go back and look at the plan and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I just have, you just learn more and more and more, and it just, you become more informed. And so that document, that base is just really important to get to that, and then start building on it. And we're going to continue meeting and figuring it out. And so the plan was just the beginning of the conversation for us, but it started with a lot of questions and taking advantage of all of the tools that CPD made available to us.
Awesome. Keith, you got a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Heidi, for that. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit with your initial presentation. What I've heard from other, neighborhoods is that there's this, kind of you don't know what you don't know type of thing when people come on these boards or these committees, where there's really a huge learning curve in even getting to understand and talk the language for a lot of folks that are just coming on. And I'm wondering if you think that it would be beneficial if the city or there was some type of outside facilitator that helped to put some of this, kind of independence into the conversation of individuals that are coming into these groups, not really like, being able to, kind of speak the language and up to speed on all the terminology or what they're even, trying to say in terms of how they want to see their neighborhoods. And I think the second point you kind of made was you had a lot of time to do this, but what, I've kind of heard moving forward is that CPD really wants to kind of make these go quicker. And if that's really actually a good thing or not, to get more of these done sooner, or if they actually need to be, the length of time that you were kind of talking about, these things took, because, these conversations take time to kind of percolate up.
Yeah, I think, and like I mentioned that I wasn't part of this steering committee from the very beginning, so I don't know what kind of organization happened, but Courtland's first couple of slides I thought I'm like, oh, wow, I learned a lot from that. So I think that if there's, maybe if there is more of an orientation, and that would be helpful. And, of course, I'm going to say that I think if the quality of life framing was when we when we latched on to that and Sean, you can, comment or back me up on this or not, but I feel like once we latched on to that that was so much more helpful for me to to explain to others. And I think that it seemed like that piece is something that we all understand. And that speaks to that we understand our lived experience, organic experience inside of our neighborhoods. When we look at it from the quality of life framing, then all of a sudden the other pieces make sense. So it's not like we're like, now we have to be experts in mobility or we have to be experts in land use. We're already experts in quality of life. We know what we want, so we just, and then we can sort of execute how to get there. So I think I don't think a third party, we didn't have, I think our team law consultants somehow during the process. So there were not a lot of planners working on a very heavy lift of what we were asking for in our plan. But I think that, maybe an orientation and also that quality of life framing, I think would really be helpful in people being able to understand and come up to speed very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. Sean, what insight do you have for us?
Yeah, I want to throw in, Heidi's right about, quality of life. We put that at the central. One thing I would recommend coming into the planning process is, I think we started off with 25 plan members and people just dropped off over time. And I think out of our original 25, by the end, we only had about 3 or 4 left. But over time, I forwarded some of the emails about this specific meeting to Heidi and others. And some of those people became steering committee members. So it's if you're not like an original steering committee member, but you're interested in the process, I would recommend, of course, that it be communicated as broad as we can. Courtland and Fernando and the rest of the team, try to get, a diverse group, renters, owners, Spanish speaking, English speaking. But even just for the steering committee, a lot of the people dropped out. So it's good to forward the emails to other people, get other people involved, get involved as early as you can, of course. And over time, you do become an official steering committee member and you get the official email invites. The events, because of COVID, a lot of them were online and anybody could get on and anybody could get on. They were allowed to get on, but I don't know if it was generally the meetings were only told to the steering committee members. But I cheated and I forwarded on, which I think is allowed. And those people, were passionate about the issues and got in. So I think that's a great thing to do, is just communicate to as broad an audience as you can. And that helped us out in, getting a core group at the end that, push for that quality of life in the front of the document.
So the more the merrier, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, awesome. Any other questions? All right, with that, I want to give a big, amazing thank you and round of applause to our presenters for, further informing us about the amazing NPI initiative going on throughout the city. And then I am going to end this part of our presentation with some notes that I had from Councilwoman Torres. She was unable to make it tonight. She had an RNO meeting, but I think it sounds like as we have continued to talk about quality of life, I think it sounds like she was glad that was the priority. She also did note that working through the pandemic probably doubled the timeline. It took longer than maybe anticipated, but it sounds like also maybe it was good that it did. Maybe there was some more education and some more outreach that was able to happen because of it. So maybe it was all a blessing. And then it sounds, and she did mention that there were some nonprofits. Heidi, do you know anything about any outreach from nonprofits getting it? No. Okay. So maybe
of course, there was a little bit, yeah. And Sean, there were, brought in like things around food access and housing, and there were nonprofits that were brought in to comment towards the end, or sprinkled in between, in jobs and things like that. So yeah.
Well, and I think her point was maybe nonprofits coming in to help with outreach, because I know that Not everybody, if you're a single mom, you're not gonna maybe have time to come to a meeting between 6 and 8 PM. So if I get if I can follow up and get some more information to her, I can send it out to everybody, but I think you know, that outreach, I think, right? I think that's probably a huge part of making this successful is the more voices, the better.
And just if I can chime in, I think I'm remembering a little bit more of this.
Please.
I think it was, I can't remember the name of the organization, but I think it was a previous planner, Val, that was working with them. And I think it was some, but yeah, it was, I think it was definitely a nonprofit organization. I can get the name and send it back to you all, but
I think what you're referring to is we had a partnership with Colorado Jobs for Justice.
yeah.
And then another one with the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, which is funded by Denver Housing Authority. And they were it was like a formal partnership and arrangement where like we'd piggyback on some survey work that Jobs for Justice was already doing, and attend each other's events. And Renee Martinez Stone was pretty involved and came to steering committee meetings and was a pretty involved participant. She's the head of the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative. And so I think that's probably what the councilwoman was referring to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Courtland. Shane.
Yeah, I just have a question on the screen that you have up here now, basically because mine's really not a question, it's more of a comment about neighborhood ambassadors, because she's referring to the Park Hill Golf Course Small Area Plan there. And quite frankly, the ambassadors did not speak for the community as a whole up here. And I think the vote that we had on the Park Hill Golf Course reflected that. So I would caution the CBD when they're using ambassadors, make sure they actually vet them and make sure they are speaking for a community as a whole. I'm sorry, I just couldn't let that go on.
No, that's important. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate any and all comments. So thank you so much. We can all learn from everybody's ideas. So thank you. Okay, and with that, I know we don't have, so I know I had only anticipated meeting until 8 and totally want to respect anybody's time, but I really do want to get into ideas and topics and what you guys are hearing. My ear is only to the ground so hard. So I want to open this to anybody to raise hands, type in chats. Maybe we raise hands and do a discussion. But about topics for me that I can get on the plan for the next year going forward. I think we're going to try and model what Joel has done with transportation is once every other month, then once a month. And then if we get a ton of topics, and I know one thing with Zap is sometimes it's too late. We can't have a 2-month gap between a meeting because we might need to address something. So for now, I'm planning on every other month, but if we pick up a lot of steam and have a lot more topics to bring to the table, I think we could make it happen once a month as well. So is there any topics that you guys have that you want to see brought in the next year to a Zap meeting? Looks like there's something in the chat. Thursday. So yes, that's the other thing, Cindy, is Thursday is. And maybe, okay, so before the questions, let's do this. If you will put your hand up, so the other transportation and sustainability meetings are also on Thursdays. There's nothing on the first Thursday. So would that be a better day and time than a Tuesday? If Thursday would be better, if you could raise your hand and let me know. And if you keep your hand down, I'll think that Tuesdays are better. I want to get the most amount of, okay, so Joel is a yes for Thursday. Anybody else for Thursday? Let's see, I only see one hand. Joel, you're the only hand I see. Okay, so I'm going to guess that Tuesday, the first Tuesday is going to be better for everybody else. So for now, we'll leave it at Tuesday. Are there any topics that you guys want to see at the upcoming Zap meetings? One, I'm planning on overlays, and then I'm also planning on the new rental restrictions that just came out for some topics. And it looks like, Keith, you got an idea?
Yeah, just a couple of things, Amber. Just one is to keep in mind that if people aren't here tonight, and it's because they probably couldn't be, potentially, and so they won't get to participate in this conversation about, when is a good night to have these.
Sure.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I think as we move forward, we can figure out a couple of different ways to get information out to folks. Like, we can easily do kind of a survey using Google Form or something, and email that out to figure out good days as well.
Okay.
And then the other thing that, I'm very interested in, and I think other folks might be as well, is that I really feel that these statewide zoning changes.
Senate Bill 213?
Yes, are going to come back in some form in the next year or two. And I think that, that's a conversation that would be good for this committee as well.
That and also the defects law. Those are the 4 kind of topics so far that I've had floating around. And what I'm thinking also is mirroring what Joel is doing and not just having one topic. I know sometimes app topics we can get a little more in the weeds. But maybe if we can keep it to 2 topics per meeting, and if it's short topics, maybe even 3. And then maybe extending to 2 hours as we go. And then field trips. I wanted to do a field trip with Brunzap, walking along Tennyson and Raleigh and looking at all the different build forms and maybe walking with a planner. I really think field trips, because I can only absorb so much on a screen. So I feel, and then we can get to meet each other, which I am such a fan of, getting together and the human connection. So I'm hoping to get that. Maybe not in the winter. Maybe we could do something in the winter, but definitely getting something planned out for the spring. And then it looks like Lou just, Heidi said, or 2 or 3 topics. Yes, that is interrelated. Yes. And if you guys have those topics that are interrelated for me, please send them my way. My email is on this bottom of this slide. If you don't have it, write it down. And if you need it, you can also email any of the ink zap. It'll also come to me too. And then Lou said maybe coordinating with the equity and rezoning task force for an update. That's another great topic. Thank you. Keith, will this save the chat? Will Zoom save all the chat or no? It will?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can do that.
And a book list. Yes, Joel had brought that to my attention, that transportation and Zap used to do a book club together. So, with just getting the committee started, I'm trying to not overextend myself. So if anybody else wants to get involved, please let me know. I would love some help. You can tell I'm super high energy. I really enjoy everybody's input and getting together and hearing what everybody has to say. So if there's anybody that wants to get involved, please also reach out to me.
I think that's another thing that we thought of as well as we were kind of trying to put this together over the course of the year, which is just that, Amber, I can't tell you how much Amber has on her plate. She has a ton, and she's always willing to step up and do things for Inc. This year, and it's been amazing. If there's a topic that you're interested in and you're able to help put a event together like tonight, by contacting someone and wanting to run a meeting, that would be amazing. So if anybody is out there that really wants to get involved a little bit more, and even if it's just on a one-off, and a couple of people at the city or somewhere else at a company that might want to talk about some kind of planning initiative, that's great. And we would definitely welcome that as well.
Awesome. Any comments, questions, anything else from the gallery? With no hands and no chats, I'm going to call this a super successful first Zap meeting. So again, I really appreciate everybody's time tonight, and looking forward to doing Michael, hopefully, bringing his committee back and doing right by him. So thanks again for coming, and we'll hopefully see you at the next meeting.